Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well. And welcome back to the channel and another edition of the occasional series here on the channel I call Garage Talk. It's basically an opportunity for me to have a chat to you about the motorcycles that I own, because we don't necessarily see them that much on the channel because I'm either riding somebody else's on a tour or reviewing a bike or whatever. So I often get asked, have you still got the GS or what's going on with your Panigale or whatever. This is a little chance for me to update you with what's going on my bikes. All right, let's roll the credits and we'll get on with it. All right, shall we start then with the mighty GS, the bike really that I suppose made my channel. I absolutely love this bike, but you don't see it very much on the channel anymore because I'm always riding other people's GSs, as I say, but I still love the bike. Of course, I've still got it. The bike itself has become somewhat, I guess, of a winter hack. That, during the winter, this is the bike that I tend to jump onto because I've got the aftermarket heated seat on here. It's great in terms of keeping the wind or the rain and stuff off you because of its big screen and fairing, etc. So it's become my sort of go-to bike in the winter. But I still love it. It's still running really, really well. Since you last saw it, it's had a service. I took it to my mate Nigel up at Moto Tune in Cheshire. He looks after all my bikes. Great fella, by the way. If you live locally and you need your bike sorting out, go and have a look at him. I get this service every 2 years. Depends on the mileage you do, and I'm not saying that you should do this, but if you don't do that much mileage on a bike, then it's pointless getting it serviced every year, particularly when you've got, a number of bikes. It gets pretty expensive. So it's 2 year service, had that done, and the bike is running as sweet as a nut. I guess the only thing I would say is that it's starting to show one or two little signs of some corrosion. These original water-cooled ones, some of the bikes had a lot of issues with corrosion, paint bubbling up on the engine, that sort of thing. I've got one or two little bits and pieces maybe on the swing arm, that kind of thing. Nothing much to worry about. It's not going to, it's certainly not a serious problem. But that's the only issue. That plus, I mentioned on the last Garage Talk that I get a bit of a petrol smell from this occasion, and lots of people suggested why that might be. They, talked about fuel venting lines and things like that. Some people said that some of the connections can perish underneath the fuel cap, and that might be where the smell's coming from. But anyway, I haven't managed to get to the bottom of that. It's not particularly strong. I just get it occasionally. So at some point, when we get the tank off, we need to have a look and make sure all the connections underneath are okay. But other than that, it's running absolutely sweet as a nut. Lots of people have asked me how I'm getting on with the tyres on this because I had the Michelin Road 6s fitted last time I showed you the bike, and I have to say I've been getting on really well with them. They seem really, really sticky. They're very, very confidence inspiring even when they're not particularly warmed up. I really like the Road 6s. I've not done that many miles on them yet, probably 1,500, 2,000 miles, something like that, but so far so good on the Michelin Road 6s. I thoroughly recommend those if you've got a big adventure bike. What else to say about it? I guess, the other thing, having done that big Alaska tour and the Pacific Northwest with Mrs. Fly on the back of the bike, we did something like 4,500 miles on a GS. It just made us realise how good the GS is, and it's we're going to try and, if we can, do another little tour locally in this country this year if we can on the GS, because it is just a brilliant bike. I absolutely love the GS anyway. So there we go. That's I think that's everything to do with the GS. Let's move on. All right, next up, let's talk custom Interceptor, my trusty Royal Enfield, which caused so much commotion when I got the work done on this a year or so back. Absolutely love this bike. This is one of my favourite go-to bikes that I ride in the summer. Of course, just coming out of the winter, it hasn't been ridden that much over the last 6 months since the last Garage Talk, so not much to report on this. Couple of things though. First thing is, I did add a little bit of flair on the back. Check this out. I stuck a British flag on the back here. I just thought it looked good. I know it's not. I know it's an Indian motorcycle. I have people reminding me of that all the time. But of course, it does have some British heritage about it. So I thought that just looked good. So I've stuck the flag on the back. So that's one thing. The other thing, I took note of my mate Dan, who said that his Royal Enfield he'd fitted with a charger lead because it's sat in his garage, and the battery can go flat. So what I have done is put an Optimate type connector straight to the battery there, and I'll run it onto one of these little Duo 1 charger devices, which just keeps the battery nice and topped up as well. So that way I know that I'm not going to jump on the bike and find that the battery's flat. So I think that's everything to report on the Enfield. It's a beautiful bike. I absolutely love it. Cannot wait to get out on it some more. Actually, there is one more thing to report on the Enfield. I've also hidden about the Enfield by way of a test. Something called an Apple AirTag, I think it's called. You may remember a while ago I showed you me installing the SysApp tracker device onto my Speed Twin. We'll talk about that in a minute. And as a result of that video, lots of people said, you don't need to spend money on a dedicated bike tracker, just buy yourself some Apple AirTags. So I bought myself a pack of 3. I thought I'd give them a little try. I think they cost me 90 quid, something like that. You stick a battery in them, and they operate using the iPhone network. work. So if somebody with an iPhone or an iPad walks past you, it'll ping the AirTag and let you know where it is. So that's all very well and good if you're in a town or whatever, but I wondered how well it worked for me because I live sort of in the countryside. Anyway, I got some AirTags. I'm using them for various things, but I have popped one around the Interceptor to see how that works. The beauty of them is that you can, of course, hide them. They last a whole year. There's no subscription or anything like that. But I have to say, and I have to report, that it's been absolutely rubbish as far as I'm concerned. It might work for you if you live in a town or city, but even when I'm sat in my study, which is not more than 20 metres in that direction, I can't even ping the tag. So it hasn't been a great success. So thank you for everybody that suggested I should try an Apple AirTag. I thought out of interest I would do so, but for me, it doesn't work. I'm sticking with this SIS app in terms of trackers. All right, so that's the last thing on the Enfield. Right, next up, my beautiful Ducati Panigale. This is my garage queen. I absolutely love the way this bike looks. Not so much the way it rides. It's you know, it's a bit like being on a torture rack, but I really love it. And from time to time, I do give her a little run out. But I haven't ridden it much since the last garage talk, it has to be said. But I did get it MOT'd, again, from my mate Nigel up at Moto Tune. He's getting a lot of plugs this particular episode. And it was interesting because when you get your MOT done, they write the mileage on, don't they, since the last MOT. And believe it or not, the miles I've done over the year since between MOTs on this was exactly 100 miles. So it's absolutely pathetic, isn't it? And the thing is, it's probably 20 miles of that was going to Nigel and back for the MOT. So I only actually rode it 80 miles in the last year. I apologise profusely for having a bike that's fully taxed, road legal, ready to go, insured and everything else, and I'm only riding it 100 miles. But there we go. I absolutely love owning it. I think it looks beautiful. In fact, let's just move around here and show you her, just to prove my point. Look at this thing. It's absolutely lovely. So I'm always having a little debate with myself about, you know, can I really afford just to have a bike that's a garage queen that I don't really ride? But I just love owning it. I love the fact that I've got a beautiful Ducati in here. It's not done that many miles overall. I think it's probably not going to lose any more value. It's a lovely example of the 899. As long as I can afford to, I'm going to keep hold of her. So, but I'm looking forward to giving her a little run in the summer, and I may make a little video or two, maybe the odd vlog on the beast. But yeah, she's a lovely thing. And while my shoulders allow me, I will keep her, and I will keep trying to ride her some more. Hopefully, I'll do more than 100 miles in the next year. Right, come with me down this end of the garage then, and let's take a look at this, the little Suzuki GSX125. This is Mrs. Flyer's bike. Lots of people keep asking me about how Mrs. Flyer's getting on with her learning to ride, and well, we'll get her on camera at some point, and she can explain to you. But basically, she's getting on fine. Hasn't ridden much through the winter, but now summer's on its way. We will be going out having some rides again. No rush to pass her test. You know, at the moment she's running on a CBT. She had to retake her CBT. I think it was last September when she took it, so she's got another 2 years of riding on the 125. Anyway, as far as the bike itself is concerned, a couple of little changes on here. Number one, it's got an Apple AirTag in it as well, so we've got some sort of tracking on it at least, even though it's not very good. The other thing we added was another one of these. Another Optimate Duo, so every bike now is actually plugged in, charging all the time. I've put a lead down the back here. Look, it comes out the back here. And she's plugged in there, so again, we're never going to face the situation where the little Suzuki is out of battery, because again, Mrs. Fly doesn't ride it that much, although in the summer it will get properly ridden. But the major change for this is this here. You might have seen, we've added a top box. Now, Mrs. Fly, to get some more practice, decided she wanted to take the bike to the gym, which she goes to quite a bit, and by putting that on there, that means she can keep her helmet and her gym kit and stuff on the bike. Also, of course, these days of high fuel costs, it means you save a few bob on fuel if you take the 125. At least that was the idea. But, of course, I had to buy the top box and the bracketry to go on, which took a little bit of fitting. Now, I've written down how much this cost me. Here we go, the top box and mounting bracket. I got it from Sports Bike Shop, my favourite supplier. They have brilliant next day service, and it cost me £248.38. So although it's added an awful lot of utility to the bike, it's going to take an awful lot of trips to and from the gym to get that 248 quid back, isn't it? But nonetheless, I mean, it's a massive old top box on there, but it just makes the bike so much more usable as a means of transport, and that's a great thing if Mrs. Fly wants to get some more practice on it. But anyway, there she goes. She's still running beautifully. I will do a little follow-up review at some point on it, because I know I get a lot of new riders watching the channel, and it'll be good to talk to you a bit more in detail about the little 125. Right, next up, my trusty Triumph Speed Twin, or as they're called now, Speed Twin 1200, I think. What to report on this? Not a great deal, to be honest. I did add, like I did with the Royal Enfield, one of those little British flags on the back, probably a bit more genuine on this one, it being a Triumph, and I think this is a Hinckley one as well, so actually made in Britain, so properly a British bike, this one. I absolutely love this bike. Again, it's my sort of one of my bikes, the two bikes of choice, this and the Enfield that I ride in the summer when I want to do a little Sunday afternoon blat. It rides beautifully. In fact, I rode this yesterday, actually. I had just a little ride out for the hell of it. The only addition on this again is It's going to get a bit repetitive, but one of those Optimate little chargers on here again, which plugs directly into here. I've got a little adapter that plugs it straight into the bike, so again, I won't face the issue of having a flat battery, which I did when we got back from the Alaska tour. I went out for a ride on it and it just went click. So that's always disappointing, isn't it? So that's not going to happen anymore. The only other thing to mention on it is, it is a Triumph after all, it does have a little bit of an oil leak on here underneath. It just occasionally gets a little weepy spot. I'll just see if there's one there now. Actually, there isn't, because I only moved the bike here yesterday after that ride. But once if the bike sat here for say a week, there will be a little spot of oil underneath it. I did mention it to Nige when he serviced it in the year, and he made sure that there was a new crush washer and all that sort of thing on it. But it doesn't seem to have resolved it. But I suppose that is a feature of Triumphs through the years, isn't it? You get a bit of an oil leak, but not so much. You don't really want it on a modern one, do you? But it's no big issue. It's like I do obviously keep a check on the oil level and stuff, and it doesn't lose enough to make any difference. But I just noticed there's a little spot of oil on the garage floor every now and then underneath the Speed Twin, but I like to think of it as a bit of authentic Triumphness. So last but by no means least, let's talk the mighty Goldwing, shall we? I absolutely love this bike, as you'll know if you've watched the channel over the last year or so. In fact, this is the new 2022 bike, so I've only had this about 8 months, and I really love the thing. I need to get some more use out of it this year. Really looking forward to doing some more touring on it with Mrs. Flyer if I can. And a few things to note on here. I made a few notes on this one, so I didn't forget anything. So first thing was sat-nav. You may remember I did get, when it was out for its first service, I did get the dealership to install a sat-nav on it, a little TomTom unit on the left of the handlebar. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to use that as kind of a way to bring all the comms and navigation into one spot, and I was going to basically not connect headsets and phones and things to the bike, but just go to the sat-nav, because I didn't think the Honda built-in sat-nav was that good. Anyway, I did that. Got the dealer to put that on there, and I tried the sat-nav out on a little tour we did of Wales, one that we just did with some pals. It was a trip that I didn't film or anything, it was just a fun trip. And actually, I found some things out about that TomTom navigator that I didn't like. Number one was, the mapping wasn't actually any better than the built-in Honda sat-nav anyway. And the other thing was, because I've got an iPhone, it's a 13 Max Pro, turns out the TomTom doesn't talk to that. I did speak to the TomTom support people, and they said at some point there'll be an update along such that it does talk to it, but in fact there wasn't during the time I had it. So in fact what I've ended up doing is taken that mount off, and I've gone back to using the standard Honda sat-nav, which I think is absolutely fine. So a bit of a pain that, because it means that, you know, it was a bit of a waste of time getting the dealer to put the bracket on and getting the sat-nav and everything else, but actually it's much neater not having it sat there on the handlebar. So in some ways I'm disappointed, in other ways maybe it's a plus point. What else to report on the Goldwing? Well, you may or may not remember when I had that first service done, I had some footboards installed on the bike. It comes normally with foot pegs for the rider. The passenger gets footboards, but I had the footboards put on here. They're I think they are proper Honda ones, if I remember rightly. And the jury is still sort of out on those. They were quite expensive to both buy and to have fitted. And I'm not sure they're an improvement, to be honest. So if you've got yourself one of these Goldwings and you're thinking about going footboards, I think I wouldn't bother. I would say they're neither better or worse, but they're not a massive improvement. In fact, I may go back to the pegs at some point, but for the next year or so I'm going to keep the footboards on there. But they haven't been a huge success, I have to say. The other bit of news to report with the Goldwing is it did have a recall over the last year. Some bikes with DCT, it wasn't just the Goldwing, but I think the Africa Twin and others too. There were some reports, I think, of intermittent stalling on the bike, so there was a recall made. So I took the bike down to Blade at Abingdon, the dealer there, and they sorted that out for me. So that was a nice, swift bit of work done. So well done to those chaps. It was a great service from them. But the only thing is, I mean, recalls, what a nightmare there must be for motorcycle manufacturers or car manufacturers to do, because massive expense, massive organisation. But it's also a pain for us, isn't it, the punter, because it takes at least half a day out to get to the dealer, get it done. It's fine that they say it's free, but it does take your time to do it. So a bit of a pain, but I got the recall sorted out. So in the end, no problems. I never had any issue with stalling, by the way, but hopefully I never will now that's been done. And last but not least to report on the Goldwing is I have now, at last, got Apple CarPlay working reliably, which is great news given in the past I didn't get it working reliably, and then that sat-nav not working well as a kind of a communications hub. So I can now use the bike with Apple CarPlay, and the trick with it is to make sure that the bike itself becomes the hub, so that you connect the headset to the bike, your phone to the bike, and then when you connect to Apple CarPlay, it works every time. It's only working plugged in, so my phone is in the back of the bike all the time, in the USB, for want of a better word, in the boot, in the top box. It would be better if it was a Bluetooth connection. I don't know why they don't do that. They do that on cars, but not on the bike yet, it turns out. But at least now it is reliable, whereas I used to moan that Apple CarPlay used to drop out. It's actually pretty rock solid now. But you do have to connect things up in the right order. You have to use the bike as a hub, so it's not super convenient, but at least it is working. And the other good bit of news was, while I was sorting that out, it turns out, when I was investigating how I could connect the phone up, it turns out there's another USB socket that I didn't know in the left-hand pannier as well. So that's a great bit of stuff. Right, so there we go. I think that's you bang up to date with what's been going on in my little fleet here in the garage. I hope that was of some interest. If you've got any hints or tips for me, then please do leave your comments below. I learn stuff from you all the time, and that would be fantastic to read any comments you've got. No plans at the moment to get rid of any bikes. Occasionally I'll get people writing to me saying, oh, if you want to sell that, I'll have it. But so, you know, that's great that you do that, but no plans at the moment. I think if anything goes, the most imminent one will probably be the GS, although I'm a little bit loath to part with it because I absolutely love that bike, and it'll only be replaced with another GS, but I want to ride the new GS first to see. Of course, if the new GS isn't significantly better, then I'll keep this one, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But yeah, other than that, that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll do another garage talk in another 6 months or so and give you any updates then. But in the meantime, ride safe, enjoy the summer, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mr. Fly. Cheerio.